Okay, well, we'd like to welcome you to our council meeting tonight. We appreciate everyone's attendance. We're grateful for those who are here. We have some students that are here, is that right? Cool. You know what we do with students or any scouts? If you want to, you can come up and sit on the rostrum with us. Entirely up to you. Just bring your chair up. That's what they usually do. We have them stampeding up here. So you're more than welcome to come up if you'd like to. You're a little timid, I understand.
We do have incentives for you.
We have candy. Yeah, so you are welcome to come up if you'd like to, so. Okay, no pressure. Okay, I need approval of tonight's meeting agenda.
Make a motion that we approve this evening's agenda. However, on item 5, I think we're going to postpone that for a couple of weeks. That is the one about the materials handling information. So those in the audience may want to know that that will not be voted on this evening, but I guess they can talk if they want to.
Again, anybody who's here to talk about that, you're welcome to take a moment and give us your opinion, or you can come in 2 weeks, whatever's easiest for you, so.
But again, my motion is the agenda be approved except for that item being postponed 2 weeks
Okay,
or more.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed?
Mayor, just a question on that motion. Is that okay?
Uh-huh.
Just, then are you gonna take, if anybody does wanna speak to that, are you gonna take that in public comment or when it reaches that point on the agenda?
I was going to do it in public comment. I was just going to, yeah. So if you want to speak to it or any other subject, we're happy to listen to you. If you get that to Kim, there's some blank forms out in the foyer, and just fill those out, get them to her, and then you're welcome to speak. And we do that so that we have your name and address on record. So anybody who wants to speak tonight is welcome to do it. So. Okay, we have a presentation for the Art City Day Rodeo royalties. So who would like to come on up? This is the best part of this time of year. Oh, wow.
Do you still have your lucky horseshoe? Was it
Yeah.
2 years ago they gave us the
Yeah,
horseshoe?
2
That was
years.
so fun.
Oh,
Dreamcatcher
my goodness.
horseshoe.
Yeah, Dreamcatcher horseshoe.
Oh, we got,
Nice.
Can I have
Thank you.
oh,
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
awesome, wow.
Yeah.
Hi, I am Oakley Wilson. I'm the Art City Days Rodeo first attendant. I am 15 years old. I am a student at Maple Mountain High School. Where I currently am on the cheer team and track team. I participate in horse events such as 4-H, ranch versatility horse competitions, reining, and barrel racing. I'm excited to represent the Art City Days Rodeo this year because I love participating in and watching rodeos, and I am so excited to share my passion for this sport with the community.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Oki.
Hi, I'm Nicole Lawton. I'm the Art City Days Rodeo Queen. I am a sophomore at Gunnison Valley High School. I do FFA. My main contests are public speaking and horse judging, and actually this year I am running for FFA office. I'm also very heavily involved in 4-H, where I show horses, I judge horses, I show livestock, and I do shooting sports. Actually today I came down from Logan from state shooting sports.
Like rifle shooting?
Rifle and shotgun.
Oh, my.
Very
That's
cool.
wonderful.
Thank you. I'm also very excited to represent the Art City Days Rodeo because I love rodeo and I love being an advocate for rodeo because I believe that everybody should have a good understanding of rodeo. On behalf of the Hobble Creek Riding Club and the Art City Days Rodeo Committee, we welcome you guys to our Art City Days Rodeo on June 1st. The pre-show starts at 6:30 and the rodeo starts at 6. 7, my bad, 7.
But if you want seats, you should get them.
Yeah, you need to get there early.
Wonderful. Well, I'll be there. Kevin knows I'll be there. And anybody else?
I'll be
we
there.
just
I'll be
welcome all of you to
Yeah,
come.
we
It's a
always
lot
have
of
fun
fun. It,
Oh,
yes.
you got some more Hey, we got to clap for her, though. Right? Good stuff.
Just a second.
Cam's got.
So I do apologize. Our princess was unable to be here today, but she did send a bio for me to read for you.
Okay.
Nicole Smith is our princess this year, and she is from Bluffdale. She was the Bluffdale Junior Princess second attendant last year, and she enjoyed every minute of her first queen or princess experience. She has been riding horses since she was 4 years old. She loves to barrel race on her horses and is learning to rope. She loves barrel racing because she loves the excitement of running as fast as you can around the barrels, and she loves learning from her mistakes, going back to practice and fix them, and seeing improvements at the next race. When she grows up, she wants to be a horse trainer. Another goal she has is to compete in the Ruby Buckle Barrel Race this summer. She plays piano and also plays basketball on a club team that has recently started traveling nationally. She is excited to be the Springville Princess because she loves participating in the rodeos and loves learning more about the community and helping with all the parades and celebrations. She is excited to participate in the Art City Days Rodeo.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Thanks, Cammy.
Well, Cammy knows that we love the rodeo, and if you want to go to the rodeo, come early. Very good.
Are they already?
Good. We have some pre-selling tickets. Go ahead, Nick.
Selling tickets again this year. We have made some changes. We are selling 2 different versions. We do have a general admission ticket and a reserved ticket. We are also recognizing our sponsors by placing them on their own bleachers.
Very good.
Because you got new bleachers. We're using the old high school bleachers too, aren't we? Did we get those down there? I don't know.
Stacy has been
Stacy.
instrumental
Yeah,
in
it's nice.
putting additional bleachers at the rodeo arena so
Cool.
that we can add more seats.
Love it. Looking
That'd be
forward to it.
great.
Very good.
So,
Okay, well, thank you very
Thanks,
much, Cammy. And thank you, Royalty, for being here. We appreciate it an awful lot. Okay, Josh, recognition? Oh. It's not on my sheet.
Tonight, we'd like to recognize Karen Ellingson, Michael Fair, and Rod Parker for their service on the Planning Commission. Karen and Mike have served 8 years from 2016 to this year, and Rod served from 2020 to 2024. And all 3 of these commissioners have been instrumental in helping our commission run well and serve its function of making really well-educated and well-considered recommendations to you. I've appreciated each of them individually. Karen runs a meeting very well, and I think we were all reluctant to have to elect a new chair upon her departure, and always appreciated the way that she solicited input from the community and from her commissioners throughout the discussions, and was able to really, especially in some decisions where there was a wide range of opinion, especially from the commission, to be able to give everyone opportunity to speak and to really shepherd the group towards a decision on some hard topics. And Mike always took the opportunity to really ask us the questions that made me think, why are we doing something, and be able to explain it clearly, and often had the really good long-term perspective in terms of why the city had done things in the past and how the city has evolved. Having heard on a number of occasions as we considered different rezones or different site plans that he either rode a horse or shot a pheasant or did something else on the site of the whatever the development proposal was. And Rod, it was great to have him on for those 4 years, the entirety of which I was here, so that was lucky for me. Rod really challenged the other commissioners and challenged me to present accurate information, and also in a number of instances, particularly with the Westfield Central New Neighborhood Plan, very specifically expressed appreciation and thanked the public that came for coming, and helped, I think, everyone feel comfortable in expressing feelings about difficult topics. And I always knew that Rod had thoroughly read the report, because he often asked me questions that I wasn't prepared for, or caught errors in reports or in proposed ordinances that I didn't catch myself. So the number of hours that each of them put in over the years, 2 meetings a week, 2 meetings a week, wow, 2 meetings a month, sometimes stretching depending on the item, all the way to 10 o'clock, and taking more hours than that outside of the meetings to be thoroughly prepared and clearly understand all the really important issues that were before them. In the time that they've been on the commission, we've adopted multiple plans, authorized developments ranging from the Fox Ridge to Lakeside Landing, and completed plans for hundreds of acres of the city, like the Dry Creek Community Plan and the Active Transportation Plan. And they really were instrumental in all those things, and put a lot of time and effort into serving the community really well. And we have both a plaque from the City Council, and then a plaque, which I hope everybody, you have a place to prominently display this, because it's not small now that we have it. But I'm going to grab these. Karen, thank you. And I have to explain this. At the last meeting, I think Karen was a little reluctant to say goodbye, and she asked for her name out of the magnet here, and we couldn't get it out because it was so stuck in there from 8 years of service. So we eventually fished them all out and matted them into these frames. So the name tags here are your name tags out of these badges with a little red trim to remind you of your magnet nameplates. So you get your name tag.
Thank you.
Cool.
And so, Mike. And Ron. And for Rod. And Mike Biscuit.
So can we see those frame things?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah,
that's
very
cool.
nice.
Nobody knows what it's like to be on the planning commission until they actually do it. And Mike has done it, and if you don't know Mike, he's been around a long time and given a lot of time to the city and to his church. And Karen is like Miss Service. I mean, she is everywhere. I was down, all of a sudden walked in the scone booth, and she's down making scones too, so she does everything. And of course, Rod I've known for, I won't say how many years, but decades. And he's a great man of integrity, and I just really appreciate all three of them and what they've contributed to our community. Thank you so much for your service. Really appreciate it. Well, I was reminded we didn't do an invocation or a pledge. And it's not on my agenda that I had in front of me, so it's okay. That shows you, Kim, that
That's why
if
we
you don't
approved
put
it.
it on there, I'm not even going to think about it. So, but we asked Logan if he would give an invocation. So,
Our dear Father in heaven, we are very, very grateful to gather here together as Springvilleans who love and care about this city. And we're so grateful for our neighbors who work really, really hard to make this the best city that it can possibly be. Our neighbors who study the issues and ponder things and work together to create solutions for tricky problems that arise. Our Father, please bless that tonight as we study different items. We will also have that same care. Please bless that we will have your Spirit with us and that we will be able to create the very best city that we all want. And this we pray in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
amen.
Should we say the
Pray,
Pledge of Allegiance?
Jens, please.
Okay.
Yep,
All right,
yep.
let's do it. Repeat after me, or with me. I pledge allegiance to the flag
Of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you.
Thank you for those who reminded me. I'm sorry. Apologize. Okay, we have one person that has asked to give some public comment, and Tim Parker, if you'd like to come up and spend 3 or 4 minutes of our time and address the council.
Thank you. I'd love to come up and tell you how angry I am that this is the second meeting that has been postponed on the WPI issue with no due notice to the citizens of Springville. It's unacceptable.
Well, it happened like at 2 o'clock this afternoon.
Yeah,
so
and what happened last time? When did it happen last time?
I don't know.
I bet you don't.
What's your comments?
Okay, you're going to get a condensed version of which
Okay.
you're lucky. As a resident closest to the existing crushing WPI operations, I'll state without doubt, that dust from the operation passes through my property every time a major wind event passes in my direction. The same is true for others when the winds take a different turn. Now, I have not witnessed any dust mitigation activities from WPI, either when they're stacking it or crushing it, or when they're stacking it above the required height. I think it's folly to believe that the dust will not leave the property's boundary. It'll never happen. I don't know why that's in code, and it's never been enforced with WPI. They get away with it for what has been now 12 years, 16 years that they have been crushing concrete there, as admitted to by the WPI representative. I think the MPS overlay should be eliminated immediately. There's no need for that overlay. It was done in connection with the council and the mayor, of course, who wanted it done. That overlay has been granted to one business, WPI. It's been denied to at least one other business when we decided we're changing direction. We're not going that way anymore. Who in the heck is going to build when the Dry Creek planning development begins? Who's going to build next to a concrete crushing plant? Which housing unit is going to want to look out over that? I have an RV storage. The windows on those RVs, they come in, they wash them off before they bring them back. Within a day, 2 days, it's covered with dust. We're inhaling that dust. All the residents of Springville are inhaling that dust. And if an agreement is reached between the legal office and WPI to come into compliance, I would ask that to include that no new construction debris be trucked onto the property like they are doing. I won't say 24/7, I'll say 16/7. I see it happening every day. Trucks galore coming in with concrete debris. And if WPI is going to be gifted yet another variance in city code, I expect that they should be held to account for any failures on their end. And lastly, if the council wishes to improve the appearance of South State Street and entice commercial and housing development, how about approving a sewer system or provide all the existing landowners with municipal water or Google Fiber? We've lived long enough hearing that it's not financially feasible, but with the new Dry Creek planned development, it must come quickly. Thanks.
Thank you. Okay, Brent Sumption, want to take 3 or 4 minutes, and then Dan Sumption, 3 or 4 minutes.
I'm Brent Sumption, resident of Mapleton, and born and raised in Springville, and have a lot of assets in Springville. So a vested interest in the city, as well as in my son's business. As a property environmental manager for the Clyde companies for the last, I've been retired for 2 years, but 7 years prior to that, I was over permitting and compliance for the Clyde companies, and dealt with the permitting of asphalt plants, concrete plants, crushers, and setting up and enforcing, or I should say, enforcing compliance on all of the Clyde company facilities with regards to air compliance with the Utah State Division of Air Quality. And I can assure you that WPI is in compliance and has been every time that I've been there. Each one of you, as city councilman, has visited the site and has witnessed the fact that there is dust control going on continuously. And with water trucks watering the roadways, and whenever there's crushing going on, by the way, since all of you have visited the site, there has not been any crushing going on. But when there is, water is constantly being added from the city water supply. Water is being added to every pound of recycled material that's being produced. And there's an absolute incentive for that to happen. The material compacts so much better when it is at optimum moisture. And so it adds to the quality and usefulness of the recycled material to have it at optimum moisture. So that is being done all the time. And in the Planning Commission meetings, we heard testimony from multiple individuals saying that when the wind speeds exceed, by the way, with the Division of Air Quality rules, when wind speeds exceed 25 miles an hour, as long as the operator is doing the reasonable dust suppression activities, namely watering the roads and putting water in the material that's being crushed, then the opacity requirements are lifted. Because at 25 miles an hour, there's dust coming from every other surrounding facility as well. We have the Springville City Rodeo Grounds to the northwest. We have a lot of construction going on in the Spanish Fork area with a lot of disturbed ground and extremely a lot of clay that has been disturbed with it. And so when the winds come from the southwest, those particles are picked up and brought the same direction as WPI. So I would maintain that if there is dust in the air, a lot of it's coming from surrounding areas that have virtually no water dust suppression going on. So again, I summarize in saying that the people that are qualified to evaluate the dust levels that are being emitted by WPI is the Utah State Division of Air Quality. And there has not been a single air quality citation issued to WPI, and it's because they are in compliance and doing a great job. So I don't know what Mr. Parker is talking about, but the rest of the neighbors are validating the fact that WPI is in compliance.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Dan?
Dan Sumption, 2120 South State. I just want to get up and say a few things. Show our gratitude to the council to coming down and touring our facility. We'd actually like to give the public the same opportunity if they'd like to come down. I'll double down on what my dad said. You know, the Utah EPA, the Bureau of Air Quality, we're heavily regulated. You've all seen it. We love Springville. We love being from Springville. Hopefully we're good stewards of Springville, and it's in our blood. I guess the last thing I would really share is, it's interesting, over the last couple weeks, contemplating shutting it down or you know, what that might look like. Last Saturday, we shut down our yard, and we are usually open on Saturdays, and we sent everybody home and shut the gate, and with a little bit of kickback from our guys, and I just said, you know, send him my phone number, give me a call, and I proceeded to get more phone calls than I would have guessed, and it was my neighbors, it was people we all know here who were doing their weekend projects, redoing their driveways, you know, you name it, when it comes to aggregates, to pick, you know, needing block for their yards, or for so on and so forth. And it was actually to help reinforce how important, how good this is for the community, for getting gravel, sand for sandboxes, you name it. I wish I could. I know you guys don't allow it, but I went and took a video. I checked it was 24, the wind was 24 miles per hour. I have I have a video from 15, 20 minutes ago of I guess it'd be 40 minutes ago, of the piles. I've got 21 cameras on that property. More than happy to give you full access to every minute, every hour of those videos. There's no dust. There's no debris. So thank you.
Thank you. Okay, thank you for your comments, everybody. Appreciate you being here, and we welcome input. We welcome people's comments, so thank you for taking the time to come down. Okay, we'll go to the consent agenda. Any questions in regard to the consent agenda, item 3 and item 4? Okay, I'll entertain a motion then for approval of the consent agenda.
I motion that we approve the consent agenda as written here.
Okay, I have a motion. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? All right, Bruce, we'll turn to number 6 since we've changed number 5.
Thank you, Mayor. Usually I've cleared the room by now, so I'm somewhat gratified to still see people here to listen to the budget presentation.
Now you can't leave.
Maybe just quick point of information, particularly for the audience that's here, the public that's watching these proceedings online. The council has met back in January for a strategy meeting regarding the budget, and then last week in an additional study session for 7-ish hours or so. I'm going to fly through this presentation fairly quickly, but want the public to rest assured that the council has deliberated over items in this proposed tentative budget far more than the few minutes that I'll take in presentation tonight. Also, by way of background, and to let the public that's viewing and here tonight, what the council is considering is a tentative budget. This is the first formal step in the budget adoption process that is enumerated in state law. The council is required by the first meeting in May of each year to adopt a tentative budget for the ensuing fiscal year. All municipalities in the state operate on a fiscal year that runs from July 1st to June 30th. Once the council takes action tonight, presuming that they do, the tentative budget will be made available to the public for review, and they'll have until the final budget adoption meeting that is calendared to occur in June to review it, and then they're invited to participate in a public hearing in June to make comments on that budget, at which time the council can adopt the final budget. I'll start and maybe I didn't count them, but I think I've got about $120 million worth of expenditures summarized on less than 15 slides, most of which only have a couple of bullet points. So I will go through these quickly, but feel free to stop me at any point and ask questions if you have them. However, nothing that I'm presenting tonight is any different than what you have been presented on in previous meetings. From a very high level, we often look to the state, which produces an annual report to the governor on economic conditions in the state. Many years I have more confidence in that report than I have the last few years. It seems like starting with COVID, my confidence in economists generally has waned. And I think sometimes I could just roll dice and get the same answer, but they do study a lot. I think what they're really identifying is the fact that there remains to be a fair amount of uncertainty in the economy, both in Utah and nationally, although the Utah economy seems to be somewhat buffered by some unusually strong economic conditions. The outlook under that report for the coming 2024 year and into 2025 is what they titled, and I'm not sure exactly what it means, but unsettled normalcy. They did acknowledge that 2023 was projected to be a very rocky year. They proposed 3 possible outcomes, either a slight recession or no growth or some growth. And what transpired, they called remarkable resiliency, which was slightly above some growth. And so with that, we're moving into this year's outlook, which identifies a few key challenges, inflation being one of those, which they're asking, noting that it's trending towards normal, but questioning whether or not that will solidify at that. Similar comments on interest rates. We have, however, witnessed an unmistakable construction and real estate slowdown. But as I mentioned, Utah continues to be somewhat insulated from broader national conditions with very low unemployment, and we're still seeing growth. So with those thoughts in mind, we've launched into the budget preparation process with a fair amount of caution and conservancy in terms of projecting revenues and also budgeting for expenses. Just at a very high level, budget at a glance, the general fund which represents the primary governmental functions of the city. This is where all the administrative work of the city, along with parks and recreation and fire and police, those public safety functions are housed. That budget is currently projected to be $39.3 million, which is up about 2.1% over last year. The total city budget, which includes the enterprise funds, which for most intents and purposes are the utility funds of the city, but also the golf course fund, comes in at just over $121 million. That budget's actually down slightly compared to last year, primarily as we see fluctuations in capital expenditures that can drive some lumpiness in year-over-year budgets. And this particular year, we're down a little bit over last year. In the fiscal 24 budget that we're currently in, we really homed in on a core service in our fire department, and made efforts this year to fully fund the expansion of services there to 24/7 coverage. This year, the focal point, again, in the center of that bullseye of core governmental services, has shifted a little bit more to police. The council approved some pay increases to make us more competitive in the market and reduce the attrition that we were seeing. And this budget fully funds those mid-year changes that were made in fiscal 24 and extends those into fiscal 25. Citywide, there's really only addition of 3.59 full-time equivalent employees, which is growth of just about 1%. So a fairly modest number of changes on the personnel front throughout the city. We've got well over approaching 350 full-time equivalent employees at this city, so relatively small growth there. The budget does include an inflationarily driven 4% property tax increase, which comes in, I believe, at just about $10 for the year for the average residents in Springville. We do maintain the enterprise fund transfer rate of 6.5%. We'll talk more about that in just a minute. And there are fairly modest but inflation-driven rate increases to most of the utility funds, with the notable exception of power. We'll talk more about that here in just a second. The blended average increase to utilities for the city is about 2.3%, which comes out to about $5 per month for the average residential unit. In the general fund, which again is that $40 million budget, these are high-level looks at the biggest revenue sources, property tax being $4.4 million, and that reflects the 4% rate increase that we're proposing, which is about $118,000. Sales tax, which is the largest single source of revenue in the general fund, we're projecting to come in at just over $10 million, which is up 2% over what we forecast fiscal 24 revenues to come in at. We are seeing a fairly sizable increase in transportation sales tax revenue. These are dollars that come in the form of sales tax, but can only be used for transportation-related projects. That's up significantly, as what's commonly referred to as the fifth, which is a taxing mechanism was authorized through legislation a couple of years ago, went into effect and began to be collected in January of this year. So that additional revenue is reflected in next year's full budget. Intergovernmental revenues, which are primarily dollars that come from other government entities, whether it's federal grants or transfers from the state, are up about 6%. Most of that's driven by a federal grant that supports one of our engineering projects. Charges for services are actually down about 3% to $4.3 million. Most of that's a reflection of lower development fees, building permits, and plan review fees. It's somewhat offset by some increases in both fees and participation rates in the recreation departments. This is a number that could change very quickly if development picks up during the year, and we'd have some repercussions for that we'd discuss mid-year if that materializes. And finally, in the general fund, $8.8 million in transfers from other funds, along with the utilization of reserves. Those reserves that are being used are dollars that have been reserved in C-Road revenue that comes from the state, along with some of the transportation sales tax revenues that are now being program for projects that are coming up to be done in this current year.
Bruce, can I stop you for just a second?
Yes.
Will you go back to that previous slide? On the property tax increase, the 4% tax rate increase, that triggers a truth in taxation hearing, is that correct? Do you want to explain that to the public, please?
It does, and yes, thank you for reminding me that. I meant to bring that up. So, under state law, if the city proposes to increase the property tax rate beyond the certified tax rate that's calculated by the state, then that triggers a truth in taxation process, which really extends the budgeting process into August. And there are a number of disclosure items that need to take place, public notice, along with an additional public hearing that will need to be held by the City Council in August. The primary reason for moving it to August is the fact that we have to work in conjunction with the county in order to implement a tax rate on property. The county assessor is the one that assesses the property tax and then collects it and then remits it back to the city, and the county's the one that produces and mails out the property tax notice to any property tax owners in the city. And so we go through the process of notifying the county of what our proposed rate will be. They then print and mail the proposed tax increase rate to all property owners that are on the rolls at the county. And once that has been mailed out, we can hold a separate meeting in August to finalize the certified tax rate and take additional comment on that proposed tax increase.
And so any property owner in the city is welcome to come to that public hearing and voice their opinion about this
Yes.
rate increase, is that right?
Yes, and part of the notice from the county, the purpose of that is the fact that you may have a number of property tax owners that don't reside in the city, may not be as privy to the routine budget process that we go through if property tax changes to the rate or not triggered.
So Bruce, you may mention this. How much is it you expect it to be on an annual basis from the property tax increase, dollar-wise?
In total for the city, it represents about $118,000 in revenue. For the average property owner, it's about $10 on an annual basis.
And is an average property 500,000, 600,000? What's the average property?
Troy, did you calculate that? I think it was 550,000 or something.
Yeah, I think that's about right, but remember they also get that reduction in value as a resident, so it's not being taxed on $550,000, but that would be the market value of it.
It'll be specifically delineated on the property tax notice before the final rate comes into place. So that's part of what will come from the county is what the individual rate for each specific property in the city is. Does that answer your question?
You bet. Thanks.
Let's talk for just a minute about general fund transfers. We're required under state law to disclose with some specificity any transfers that come from enterprise funds into the general fund. And we have a number of those transfers. There was a notice that is going out, or did go out with the most recent utility bill that explains it and identifies those transfers amount. We've also posted on social media. It's available on our website. There's sort of three broad categories of transfers that are coming from the general fund or from the enterprise funds into the general fund. The first is what we call administrative fees. This is really an overhead charge. So this is an assessment that we make to enterprise funds for services that they receive. So there is an exchange of value here. So this would be things like, for example, the finance department does the utility billing for all the utilities within the city, but we charge back the cost of that to the enterprise funds. Then the enterprise funds don't need to go either hire employees to do that or contract it out. The city provides it broadly, but there's an accounting exercise that we go through to assign that allocation. Those dollars are listed there in that first column and represent about $3.6 million. That would be for human resource services, legal services, information system services, any other administrative support that the city generally provides to the enterprise funds. The next is an operating transfer. This is more of a policy decision by the council. The letter that went out in the utility bill explains this a little more thoroughly, but we view the utilities of the city as resident-owned enterprises, and this is effectively a return on investment for the operation of those utilities within the city, and in other terms could be considered a fee in lieu of taxes. So if Rocky Mountain Power, for example, were to be operating an electric utility in Springville, they would pay a franchise fee for utilization of the right-of-way within the city in order to run their business. And this is an amount comparable to that. That total across all the departments of the city equals about $3.4 million. And then we also have various utilities, electric, water, sewer, stormwater services that are provided free of charge to general fund departments of the city. And we've made an effort here to identify and allocate those appropriately throughout the city. The total of all transfers comes in at just under $8 million. Of those, the $3.4 million used from the operating transfer are really those that supplement additional services that help offset revenue that we'd have to raise in a different way, largely through property tax, if that transfer was not available. And maybe just to clarify part of the logic or reasoning behind that philosophy is that virtually everyone in the city uses the utilities, electric, for example, but not everyone in the city pays property taxes. So any tax exempt entities in the city that really do impact the services of the city wouldn't contribute to the cost of those services if they were fully supported only by property tax. But by utilizing a portion of the revenue from the utility funds, they contribute to the services that we provide through the city. I won't go through each of these, but I'll just mention again that we had just over 3 full-time equivalent additions in personnel in the city. Several of these are from mid-year changes made in fiscal 24. They're now just being continued and fully funded through fiscal 25. Down at the bottom of the slide, I mentioned what we went over in the meeting last week, that we've created a new department in the city of internal services that houses development engineering, information systems, facilities, and fleet services. That really didn't create any new positions. It just reorganized parts of the city under a different heading and department. And then we did move the Communities That Care Coordinator, which is a drug prevention program, from the legal department to the library. We have budgeted for 3% merit increases and an additional 0.75% for other pay adjustments to be made for personnel broadly in the city. We've also covered 4% of the increase in cost of benefits, and there have been some changes that we haven't quite rolled out yet to the employees as it relates to the benefit plans there. In terms of general fund capital projects, the total general CIP budget is $5.1 million. About $1 million of that is, and I'm not hitting every project, just the larger ones, $1 million for initial engineering design of the flood protection project out in the Hobble Creek area as we approach the western boundary of the community. That's funded by a federal grant. We have $3.2 million in street projects budgeted. It's a little bit larger number than normal, but we've held off on doing a number of the street maintenance projects over the last couple of years as Google Fiber has been in town digging up the streets, and we just chose not to place overlays and other preventative work knowing that they'd come in and dig the street back up. So we're playing some catch up this year. There are $227,000 budgeted in public art programs, part of our Percent for the Arts program, and trying to bolster the identity of Springville as Utah's art city. In a separate fund is housed all the vehicle and equipment for the city. These are scheduled replacements of vehicles and equipment that allow the various departments to provide the services that they do. Policies direct when those items are replaced, and for fiscal 25, we've budgeted $1.8 million to renew and refresh portions of the city's fleet. You're aware that we have a relatively new revenue source that was approved by voters in Springville, which is the PAR tax, which is a 0.1% sales tax that was added and is in place for 10 years in the city and can be revoted after 10 years. In this budget, there is proposed, as recommended by the PAR board of the city, $948,000 in projects. 760,000 of those are capital projects. I've not listed all of them, but a few highlights would be some fairly significant improvements to the southeast corner of the CRC, the addition of another pickleball sixplex, some improvements to the Dry Creek Trail, and walking path around the perimeter of Memorial Park. In addition, there's 45,000 in mini grants that are provided to various art-centric organizations within the city in the form of grants, and then some additional art, parks, and recreation-related programming in the amount of $143,000. I mentioned quickly some inflation-driven rate increases on enterprise funds. This is just a chart that highlights that. You can kind of see over, I don't know if you can see a cursor on here, but column labeled 2025, those would be the proposed rate increases for water at 3.5%, sewer at 3.5%, stormwater at 3.5%, and solid waste at 1.25%, with no proposed increase on power. And I'll talk about that in just a second. On average, that comes out to about 2.3%, or as I mentioned earlier, about $5 per month for the average residential user. We're very high level, and we're on the home stretch here now. I don't know if we'll go nose to nose like they did in the Kentucky Derby on Saturday, but Public Works, which would be water, sewer, stormwater, streets, solid waste, and the engineering services that support those, are really focused this year on some organizational changes, some staff assignments, and workforce responsibility changes in order to more effectively carry out their missions. They're focused on the operating side on updating some master plans and then the implementation of those plans, and also doing some cost of service analysis and rate design in each of those separate areas. And those rate increases that I just highlighted again are inflation driven. In terms of capital projects, I mentioned already the $3.2 million in street projects. Water's been able to secure a couple of state grants. These are actually coming from ARPA dollars from the federal government, channeled through the state, but $1 million to replace the Upper Highline ditch, to pipe that, and then also to roll out a pilot AMR metering project. Both of these are water conservation related projects. In the sewer department, upgrades to the headworks in the wastewater treatment plant of $1.5 million, along with other system improvements of about $435,000. A $500,000 payment for the Westfield Central Detention Basin, which I believe has already all been constructed, but the payment to the developer who put that in is budgeted for next year, along with an additional $245,000 for a detention pond over on 12th West. In the power department, generally flat revenue and no proposed rate increase. Much of that choice to not increase rates is the fact that power markets have stabilized considerably. We also have, I was down there just yesterday, getting very close to being able to commission the new CAT generators. They should be online in time for our summer run season. But the result of both of those conditions is the fact that our power purchase budget is down about 7%, $1.6 million. That power purchase line item is the largest single line item in the city's budget. In terms of capital projects, and these are really just a couple of them, but some replacement or upgrades to the Baxter substation, the feeders around it at $1.1 million, and some renewal and replacement of distribution circuits, and then a fair amount budgeted for expected new development. Of note, and we've discussed this a couple times in previous meetings, SUVPS, which is an interlocal agreement that we are involved with that deals with transmission and transformation of power with South Utah Valley cities, primarily driven by growth, both in Springville, but largely to the communities to the south, but we're interconnected in a system. There's some long overdue projects there to increase capacity. SUVPS is in the process now of issuing debt, about $50 million of debt to actuate those projects. Our assessment, our share of the debt service on that is budgeted in this upcoming budget, which increases that assessment to SUVPS, nearly doubling it. Finally, the golf course, which is organizationally in the Parks and Recreation Department, but it functions as an enterprise fund, so as a standalone business. Revenues there are projected to be up 11%. We saw significant growth of the golf course during COVID, which we thought at some point would wane a little bit, but it hasn't and remains very popular. The last couple of years, they've chosen to introduce fee increases in the off season, so there is proposed in this budget a 7% increase to green fees and cart fees, but that won't go into effect until December of 2024, in preparation really for the spring of 2025. They continue to see high utilization during the busy months of May to September. 83% of available tee times are going booked. If you annualize that, or over the annual season, so including the slower shoulder months in the early spring and fall, utilization drops down a little bit, but still very high at 75%. And with that continued demand, we've been able to see revenues over expenses that have freed up a little bit of cash to work on some often deferred projects, capital projects there. You know, we replaced the irrigation system a couple of years ago, and I misprinted a word there, but there's some cart path replacements budgeted, and not a Bridget, but a bridge replacement sinking fund, as those aging bridges will be replaced over the next few years.
Sandbag replacement. Are we going to replace those sandbags? They're still there. Bridges. They're bridges.
They are still there, and I'm not fully sure what the plan there is.
That was just to lighten it up.
Thank you, I appreciate that.
Dry, so.
Yes, I'm done being dry. I believe that was
Bridget was good.
the last time.
Bridget was the best part.
Kind of sounds
Yeah,
the same.
it was all good. That was very quick. That was very high level. That was very dry. It was probably very monotone. I apologize for that.
You got through it.
If you've got questions, I'm happy to address them. Otherwise,
The kids even made it through it.
that's
No,
impressive.
not all of them. One fell asleep. Well, the interesting thing is that it's the city council's responsibility to take in money from revenues, a variety of revenues, and then to spend it. And to make sure we take in, or spend everything that we take in. Now, you don't do that in your home, but that's called a balanced budget, so you don't spend more than you take in. And so when you go down to the Clyde Rec Center, we want to make sure that you have the lights on and the water's warm and those kind of things. And when you play soccer, that there's coaches there. I mean, it's just a very big enterprise no matter where you go in the city. And that's what your moms and dads pay taxes for. And when you have sales taxes, we get part of the sales tax that when you buy something on Amazon or wherever. And so that's really, it is confusing. It's confusing for us because there's just so many places that this all goes. But principally, it's in one pocket and out the other. And if you think of it that way, some people say, well, I want to have this in the city. Okay. If you want that, then the money's got to come from somewhere. And that's what the big challenge is where do we do that? Do we just keep charging people more? Sometimes it is a charge, but other times we have to cut services. So those are the balancing acts that we do. Does that make sense? Okay, great.
Much more eloquent than I was.
I don't know about that.
We'll look for a motion, and again, I'll mention that the couple of items we discussed in the study session will work into the budget and propose for the final. But the resolution before you really is to set a public hearing in June for consideration of the final adoption of the budget.
Okay, and then you got those two that we talked about in the work session.
Yes.
Okay, all right. Other questions for Bruce? Okay, I'll entertain a motion then for approval of the tentative budget.
I'll make a motion to approve to approve resolution number 2024-08, adopting the City of Springville tentative budget for fiscal year 2024 through 2025, and set a public hearing for adoption of the final budget on June 18th, 2024 at 7 p.m.
Need a second?
I will second that.
Okay, that's a roll call vote. Mike?
Yes.
Craig?
Yes.
Mindy?
Yes.
Logan?
Yes.
Jake?
Yes.
Very good. And then also maybe to help you just a little bit, you just heard like 15 minutes of it. We spent how many hours on it the other day? I mean, we spent, yeah. So we went through it 7 hours.
Some
So,
in January.
so we spent hours and hours and hours going through this. And that's why we didn't have a lot of questions, but we're doing this so that the public can hear a little bit more about it. Okay?
And I also say it helps that we have a lot of great directors who worked really hard on each of their departments' budgets and got us to this point. So I want to say thank you to you guys. It means a lot.
Yes, I completely agree with that. And in light of that, I know that you all want to go home. Sorry, Craig, but I'm going to ask just a question, a follow-up in relationship to the budget, budget meeting, how everybody thought the budget meeting went, because it was way different than what Mike and Craig and I have been used to. So what was your read on it? I've talked with some of you, but just give me your 2 cents worth. And
I really liked it. I didn't have a lot to compare it to, but I felt like it flowed really well. Everybody came well prepared. It was good.
Mayor, just to jump in, I told the mayor as we talked about this, we've already kind of gone through and come up with a list of things we'd like to improve on and change for next year. And in my time at Springville City, which is getting long, we've had kind of the shortest meeting was about 3.5 hours, and the longest was 16 to do that April meeting. So it doesn't need to be longer. It doesn't need to be shorter. Any kind of guidance you can give us as a council for what you'd like to see will be helpful.
yeah,
I mean, there was some commentary. I mean, on not a critical, but maybe there was some commentary that probably wasn't necessary. I mean, I would have liked to see just numbers at the budget thing and consistency across all directors. Because some directors were like numbers, and then others were like, "Oh, hey, this is the sky, and it's blue, and it's beautiful." So
commentary focused on budget. Is
yeah,
that what?
yeah, and not. I mean, I like talking about blue sky, I really do. But at that point, it was just like, let's just talk about the numbers rather than shades of the sky.
Are you thinking like, don't give me a report about the department?
How the
Because we have
department's doing. I
times
just
and
want to know where
places
you're
to do
spending
that.
money. And straight up, in previous ones, and maybe it gets us into the weeds sometimes, but we just said, where are you spending your money? Oh, hey, what's this? And we would drill into that rather than, well, we're gonna make the city beautiful and it's gonna cost $2.2 million. Okay. Do you see what I'm saying? That's just a different aspect as far as. But some people were right on, and then no, I'm not again not hypercritical. I just like to.
Yeah, we took note of that. I mean, there were different approaches to it all, and
And
as
I
we said
like
at
the more number for that meeting. But now in here, let's talk blue sky.
Okay, good. Mindy, you had a couple comments I thought were really well done.
I just felt like it was a little rushed, and I know that we spent 7 hours, and how was that rushed? But I don't feel like feel like we, as a new person, I could use a little more training on what some of those GL accounts were, what they're used for, just a little bit more. And I felt like our directors had to just be like, you have 10 minutes to go over your whole entire budget. I just didn't feel like that was an adequate amount of time for them to go through their whole entire budgets, because some of them have more than one budget. They have like 4 or 5 different budgets, and so it was a little bit hard to follow sometimes because it was so rushed.
Very good.
I wondered, do you guys roll dice to know who goes first and who goes last? Because I felt a little sharper at the beginning of the meeting maybe than at the end of the meeting.
Yeah, we actually
splitting
laughed
it into
Brad had a lot of comments on that. He's like, "Oh, great, I'm last," kind of thing. And some things you like being last because maybe you're out of questions, and others. This time it was alphabetical. And that's how it was put. It was simply alphabetical. But yeah, we realized quickly in the meeting that the budget book is organized by general ledger numbers, which is not alphabetical, and then some of those aren't in order because of change in organization. So that's one of the things that's on our list to figure out how to do that better.
Well, I appreciated Bruce printing off for us. I think having those beforehand in a physical copy is nice for us to be able to have.
So if I'm counting correctly, this was my 6th budget term, I guess. I mean, January and April both. I thought this was probably the best that I've seen. Contrary to Craig, I like the blue sky because it gives me a frame of reference for the numbers. I want the numbers, but that kind of blue sky approach that Craig calls, I don't see it that way, but I understand what he's talking about. But it does help me frame the numbers just a little bit better.
So can we drill on that for a little bit? And if you have the specific example, we're not going to be offended by that. So I mean, to me, our goal was to kind of keep it at a policy level, and then with the numbers. So the blue sky comment is stuff about the department that was extraneous from the budget discussion. Is that a fair way to say it?
That, and when I was in management and I had to worry about a whole bunch of different P&Ls, it was nice to have the P&Ls all the same, because the line items, the 920 and the 942 and that were all the same. So that, like, we got into a little discussion, well, what about this education and training? Some guys got in the weeds and we talked about their education and training, and other guys just kind of, oh yeah, it's in there. And it's just like, no, I kind of want to see that, because if I'm evaluating somebody's profit and loss, is what it would be in industry, or their budget system, I'd be like, I want to know the percentage that you're spending on labor. I want to know the percentage that you're spending on this, because then you can start looking across not just your own indices, but others. You can go to other cities and say, what are you guys spending on utilities? What are you spending on trucks? What are you spending on labor in this department? And then you have an indication of what it is, versus if you're like, oh, I'm spending $2.6 million on my water department.
Yeah, so one of the things we've been talking about is whether we kind of create a summary budget that looks like what you're talking about, so you can kind of see everything a little more rolled up maybe, but consistent across them. And then if you have questions, we'd still provide the whole thing, and hey, I can go down and look at the training budget specifically if I want to, or whatever. So does that meet kind of what both of you are saying, and really Mindy as well? Or is your comment slightly different?
Well, yeah, I think so. For me, anyway, I think the explanation is good, and I want to see the numbers that Craig wants to see, but I want to see them in context. So that's where I'm coming from. And unlike Logan, I was sharp at the end. I got my second win when Brad got up.
It was your third Dr. Pepper.
So, yeah, I mean, I don't mind the time frame. Some of them have been short, some have been long. Some of them have had activities for us to do, team building type things like that. I'm not sure I like that. I'd like to more focus on the budget, like what Craig's saying, but I want to see that budget in context.
Same as Craig. I like to see the consistency between all of the departments, and I'd like to be able to ask a little bit more questions about the individual GL codes and why those amounts exist in there.
Yeah, we're comfortable with that and expect that. And to that point, if you still have questions, let us know. We're happy, Bruce or I are happy to go through any of them. And if you want the specific directors, we can do that as well. Happy to do that individually, for sure.
I think there was one unresolved item. I think you brought it up at the very end, that we all were like, I'm not too, and I don't think we ever got the answer. And it wasn't a big deal, but I think it was unresolved.
Yeah, it wasn't a big deal. What it was the employee, what do you call it?
Incentive or?
Recognition, employee recognition, where the budget line items on employee recognition were all over the board, and it wasn't consistent with how many employees were in each one of those departments. So I was a little bit confused about, why, well, just as an example, I don't remember the exact numbers, but why, for example, Brad Stapley's is lower than maybe the library or something like that. So, because Brad's got a lot of employees, I don't remember which is which.
Yeah, and this is,
it was just inconsistent, and I didn't quite get a handle. We didn't quite figure that one out, I don't think.
Yeah, and well, we can answer that very clearly. Up till last year, it was determined specifically by your full-time equivalent count. It was divvied out on that basis. Each year we kind of said, how much are we allocating to that function? With the letting go of the mayor's proverbial tree and the directors taking ownership of that, They're each viewing employee incentives on their own basis with their own programs. Same happened with uniforms. Uniforms were strictly layered out. Now they had flexibility. Now, strictly layered out, the uniform expenses in administration are much, much different than the uniform expenses in fire, but it was still all based on a formula before last year. Now the directors have control on that. And you saw that in several line items. Training is another one. We didn't have as much centralized control over training, but still before last year would review each of those lines, look at the detail and ask questions surrounding that. And that's largely gone away with the new method. Now, that doesn't mean everything comes forward. We're doing our review, we're asking questions, but it is shifting some of that responsibility to you as a council. To your point on line items, that if you have concerns over either consistency or amount, hey, that seems out of line to be asking those questions in that budget meeting.
So that's very helpful. I, for one, am a huge proponent of delegation. And I love the fact that you've given that to the directors and allowed them to do what they want to do with what they need to have done. So I'm not criticizing that thing at all from any of the directors or anything else. I just needed to wrap my head around why it was the way it was, and the very fact that that's been delegated to them to choose to use their specific budgets in the way that they're using them, I'm fine with.
Yeah.
Maybe I could add just one minor point to that. It's one area where it really does highlight the difference between the way many of the departments are staffed. If you take the streets department, for example, they have 8 full-time employees. So we can say, well, we're going to do employee recognition of, say, $200 per employee, and they can go host a summer barbecue or something like that. And it's the full-time equivalent calculation works quite nicely for them. But if you go to the CRC, they have 250 part-time kids that are there, and they really, if you limit it to a FTE allocation, they get shortchanged a lot. So it's sort of like, well, okay, the lifeguards, you guys can have a hot dog but no bun, and the exercise instructors, you get the bun but no hot dog, but nobody gets a whole hot dog and bun because you're not a full-time equivalent. So the calculus looks different because we can't split the people when we come to actually.
Good. Yeah, that's good.
The one thing that I had on uniforms is that I felt like when I asked the question that actually it wasn't really a uniform. The definition, I don't know what is a definition of a uniform, but I imagine a uniform would be something that you had to wear to represent Springville. But I felt like some of the answers that I got were actually more like swag, an employee recognition item rather than a uniform per se. So I felt like that was just a little bit muddled there with, maybe our GL codes need to be defined in such that so that they can't put those types of things in there and have it be called a uniform. They should be
I'm
under
smiling
employee
a little bit because that's Bruce's department job, chasing that all year around, that those go into the right GLs, because they have clearly delineated things there, but sometimes they get coded in ways that we have to chase a little bit, and I think you're identifying that.
Okay, anything else?
This has been great for us.
Yeah, and I pile on with Logan. I thought that the directors did an incredible job. I mean, their first swing at the plate, and for those who are new on the council, that was their first swing at it, and I thought they just did a really outstanding job, and so I appreciate all the effort and time they put into it. So it was nice to see Patrick nervous, Jason nervous. I mean, it was, all of a sudden it wasn't Troy anymore. It was like 10 or 12 different sideshows. It was good.
Me nervous about what Patrick and Jason were going to say.
Okay, very good. Any other items we need to talk about? Okay, I'll entertain a motion for adjournment.
I'll set a motion to adjourn.
Okay, great. A second?
Second.
Those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Thank you.